The parshas that we're in, Parshas Va'eira. So the hero of these parshas is Moshe Rabbeinu. So let's share an idea that we find in the sermon regarding Moshe Rabbeinu. You know, even before we get to that, so this Shabbos is Shabbos Mevorchim. We bless the new month that's coming in, the month of Shvat. Yeah, every month has its own unique sort of identity and personality. And the identity and the essence of a month is very much revolving around a yontif that's in that month. So the month of Shvat has the yontif of Tu B'Shvat. Tu B'Shvat. Tu B'Shvat. Tu B'Shvat is a yontif that, it's funny, as we get closer to Mashiach, it becomes a little bit more popular. Throughout the vast majority of our goals, Tu B'Shvat was just a day that you don't say Tachnun, but nothing really more than that, you know? What is Tu B'Shvat? So Tu B'Shvat, the Gemara tells us, is Rosh Hashanah for trees, right? The New Year for trees. The Gemara says, what does that mean? New Year for trees. So the Gemara says that throughout the winter, as we know, the trees are bare, right? They don't have leaves, they're not producing fruit. And so Tu B'Shvat, says the Gemara, that's the day, that's the moment where in the pnimius, in some sort of hidden way within the tree, the sap, and there's some sort of gathering of energy within the tree, getting itself ready to really emerge when the weather permits it to produce leaves again and fruit and so on. So it's the beginning of the new year for trees. Now, what's fascinating about that is, first of all, like, who cares that it's Rosh Hashanah for trees? Like, what does that affect us? Like, what do we learn from that? So why do we celebrate the fact that it's the first day of the tree's new year? What's the difference? Also, it's funny. I mean, if we're going to pick a day that's Rosh Hashanah for a tree, why would we pick Dafka? Probably what we would do is pick the day where it begins to actually produce leaves and blossoms and so on. It's like more Nisan time. The fact that Chazal say, no, the Rosh Hashanah for a tree is in the middle of the winter, really. The day where within the tree, in a way that you can't even see and you can't even tell anything that's going on, the energy in that tree begins to pull and concentrate, giving it the ability to then emerge during Nisan. Like, why is that Rosh Hashanah Lilanis? Okay, so it's like this. You know, Moshe Rabbeinu, regarding Moshe Rabbeinu, we know that it's a whole crazy story, right? So he's the biggest miyuchas. Moshe Rabbeinu has the best yichas. His father's Amram, the Gadol Hadar. One of the four people, the Gemara says, that never did an aver in his life is Amram. So he comes from very, very chashuv people. His grandfather's Levi, Yaakov Avinu. There's no greater miyuchas. There's no greater person with lineage like Moshe Rabbeinu. And yet we know the story is that when Moshe Rabbeinu was born, there was a decree against the baby boys. And because of that, his mother and his father, they were very nervous about him. So they tried to hide him for 3 months, making sure that no one knew that he was born. After 3 months, they couldn't hide him anymore. We all know they put him in a basket by the Nile. And the daughter of Paro, Basia Bas Paro, goes and retrieves him and raises him as her own. So it says in Pasuk, V'etz in Parshas Shemais, V'yigdal Moshe, that Moshe became older, somewhat of an adult. V'etz Elochav, and he went out to go see his brothers, the Jewish people. So the Ramban says like this. The Ramban over there in that Pasuk, that Moshe grew up, and he went out to see his brothers. The Ramban says a shocking thing. It's not shocking. He says that until that point, that Moshe Rabbeinu grew older, Moshe didn't know he was Jewish. Basi was so worried about Moshe's safety, being raised in the house of Mamish under Paro's nose, is the savior for the Jewish people. Basi was so petrified of Paro, killing this kid, just out of his paranoia that any Jewish boy could be the next redeemer, So because of that, Basia kept the secret, not only from anyone else, not only from Parai, but kept it from Moshe Rabbeinu himself. Moshe Rabbeinu himself didn't know that he was a Yid. And said the Ramban, only when somehow he found out, someone told him, the word got out that he was a Yid, only then, if he went out to go see his brothers, he's like, I'm a Yid, I want to know what Jews are like. He all of a sudden developed this kinship to them. The Ramban writes this, the Barbanel also. Now, by the way, how old was Moshe Rabbeinu at this time? So according to some opinions, he was 20 years old, or possibly even a little bit older than that. So here's the shocking thing, that Moshe Rabbeinu, the greatest, holiest Jew to ever live, the holiest Jew to ever live, the one that gives us eternity, the one that is our spiritual father, didn't know that he was a Jew until he was a little bit older. That's a shocking thing. But if you think about it, it's not only is our spiritual father someone that sort of went through that, Moshe Rabbeinu, but our physical father, who's our physical father? It's Avram Avinu, right? So like Avram and Moshe are both similar in terms of they are the beginning of the Jewish people. Avram Avinu physically, and Moshe Rabbeinu spiritually. Avram Avinu also had a similar dynamic, right? Avram Avinu, the Rambam says, until he was 40, until he was 48, didn't know about God. And at that point, he turns his life around and he's considered to have converted. This is the shocking thing. The beginning of the Jewish people, the greatest of our people, were put in a situation in life When the earlier years, the Pashut had no clue who they were. They had no clue about what life was about. Even in terms of another spiritual father that we have, Rabbi Akiva. Moshe Rabbeinu is our spiritual father in terms of the written Torah, and Rabbi Akiva is our spiritual father in terms of the oral Torah, Torah Sheba'al Peh. Rabbi Akiva is the same story, similar, right? 40 years. First 40 years of his life, he's put in a situation, it's not his fault, he was born in an environment, in a family, where he didn't appreciate Yiddishkeit. So much so, the Gemara says about Rabbi Akiva that he used to say in his early years, that if he ever saw a Torah scholar, he wanted to bite him like a donkey. So the students would ask him, like a donkey? That's not. People usually say, I'll bite you like a dog. Why a donkey? He said, no, dog breaks the skin, a donkey breaks the bones. I wanted to bite him like a donkey. Rabbi Akiva hated Talmidei Chacham. Why? Okay, because that's how he's brought up. He was brought up in an environment, his family, whatnot. His environment was that rabbis, they have all whatever it is, they abuse their power, whatever the issue was, how he was raised. But then something happens, he meets Rachel, the whole story, and then his life turns around, he becomes Rabbi Akiva. So what's the pshat with this? That the origins of the Jewish people, spiritually and physically, were these neshamas, these unbelievably great neshamas, were put in a position where in the beginning of their life, they pashut didn't know who they were. They simply didn't know no one knew who they were, not even themselves. So there's a shach. The shach, there's two shachs, really. The famous shach is the Pirush on Shulchan Aruch, on Choshen Mishpat, written by one of the Gedolei Achronim. This is a different shach. There's a shach written, the Sefer Shach al Torah written on Chumash, is one of the students of the Rizal. And the shach explains this phenomenon in the following way, and the shach himself says that it's not something you should talk about in public, but you should only talk about it in order to give Jews chizuk. So that's why we're doing it. So the shach says like this. The shach says that before neshamas come to the world, the neshamas are in Shemayim, right? Neshamas are in Shemayim. And whatever this means, I'm not getting involved in what this means, I don't know myself. But says the shach that when the neshamas are in Shemayim, they are sort of, they're under the control, I guess you can say, or under the influence of the Satan, of the Yetzer Hara, of evil powers, and the Yetzer Hara and the Satan, v'chul, that entire world of impurity is being sustained, is drawing life force from these neshamas before they come to the world. So everything has to have a life, everything has to have a battery, everything has to be plugged in somewhere. So where does the Yetzer Hara, where does the Satan get its life force from? It gets its life from the neshamas that have not yet come to the world. So said like this. Therefore, every time a neshama comes to the world, every time a baby's born, the Yetzer Hara and the Satan is very upset about that. Because now that the neshama comes to the world, it's losing a little bit of its energy supply. Especially, says the shach, especially when you have a very big neshama, a very, very big neshama, a very powerful neshama, it's losing a lot of potential. It's losing a lot of energy. So, therefore, said the shach is like this. Very often, therefore, what the Rebbeinu Shalom does is like this. The only type of situation that the Yetzer Hara would be willing to allow a neshama to come to the world with, right, to come to the world into, without putting up too much fight, is what? Is if the neshama is going to be put into a family, into an environment, into a society where most likely this person is going to end up being a Rasha. A little bit of my of some of the revenue right now, I have to put in some money in order to get back. So I'm willing to sacrifice a little bit of the energy that I would get right now from the neshama being in heaven, because long term it's going to be productive to me. Because long term this guy's going to go down, become a terrible Rasha, and eventually it'll be, my business will be matzlich because of that. That's the situation that he'll. And therefore, said the shach, when the Rebbeinu Shalom has a very, very big neshama, Avraham Avinu, a Moshe Rabbeinu, a Rabbi Akiva, very big neshamas. The Yetzer Hara is going to be fighting tooth and nail not to allow this neshama to come to the world. So, for the only way, said the shach, is that the Rebbeinu Shalom is able to allow this neshama to come to the world in a way that the Yetzer Hara is not going to put up a huge fight and make huge machlokes about it. Is what? Is if the Rebbeinu Shalom takes this neshama and puts it in an environment where, according to the natural rules of things, he's going to fail. To the point of where the Satan says, you want to take this Avraham Avinu and give him as a child of Terach? Gesundheit. But fine. The odds are he's not going to be an Avraham Avinu. You want to take Moshe Rabbeinu's neshama and put him in a situation where he's going to be raised in Paro's house, where he himself isn't going to know that he's a Yid? Good luck with that. Good luck with that. And the Yetzer Hara says, I'm all fine. You want to do that? Gesundheit. I'm happy to let him go. And that's what happens. But what the Yetzer Hara doesn't realize about these neshamas is that these neshamas are so powerful. These neshamas are so profound, so big, that despite the fact that according to the natural order of things, a person who's raised in the house of Paro should become an Egyptian. And a person that's raised for 40 years with a hatred of Torah should not become a Rabbi Akiva. But what's amazing about these neshamas is that these neshamas carry with them the unbelievable power of refusing to accept the situation that they're in. They refuse to buy into the mistakes of their own past. They refuse to accept the stam, the average that they've been put into. That's how amazingly huge these neshamas are, and that's specifically why the Rebbeinu Shalom does this. The Rebbeinu Shalom davka put any neshamas that are put in environments that seem to be less than optimal experiences to produce a tzaddik. It's usually because those neshamas are so big and so holy that if they were to be put in a holy environment, the Yetzer Hara would go crazy with that. He wouldn't allow it to happen. So the Rebbeinu Shalom therefore has no choice but to take these big neshamas and put them in a less than the perfect environment, because by doing that the Yetzer Hara will be okay with it. The Sudden will allow it to happen, but Hashem trusts these neshamas to claw their way out, and that's how great these neshamas are that they're capable of doing this. What does it do with us? So listen to this. So Rav Moshe David Vali, not the Shach, a different person. Rav Moshe David Vali was a student of the Ramchal. So he writes in one of his Svarim, Sefer Likutim, based on the following pasuk. It says in pasuk, "Mipi oilim v'yoinkim yisada ta'ois, lahashbis oyev u'misnakim." It says in pasuk, the Rebbeinu Shalom, you have from the mouths of young children, of youths, you've established strength in order to silence the mouth of the prosecutor. That's the pasuk. Again, from the mouths of young children, you've established strength in order to silence the mouth of the prosecutor. What does that mean? So, Sar Moshe David Vali, this rule that the Shach mentioned, that big neshamas, dafka, the bigger neshamas, are put in environments which are the opposite of them, to the point of where they themselves don't know how great they are, all to create an atmosphere where the Yetzer Hara is miyayish, the Yetzer Hara gives up hope and says that there's no chance they're going to become the people they're supposed to become. It's not possible. And only in that situation did the neshamas were able to come to the world. Sar Moshe David Vali, that's exactly the nature of the neshamas before Mashiach. B'derech klal, the Moshe David Vali said, what's going to cause Mashiach to happen, what's going to bring Mashiach, are going to be davka young people. He says, "Mipi oilim v'yoinkim," from youths, you've established strength. It's davka going to be young people who have big Yetzer Haras, who have big problems, emotional baggage, you name it. But it's davka those people that are going to push against the sort of the gravitational pull that's holding them down because of the situations that they were born into, and dafka with all that inertia holding them down, and only discovering who they are maybe a little bit later in life, and dafka with all of that climbing their way out to become the people that they have to become. That's dafka going to be the key to bring Mashiach. And said Moshe David, you know why? Because every other type of person is on the Yetzer Hara's most wanted list. The only type of people in order for Mashiach to come, you got to be under the radar. You know what I'm saying? You have to be under the radar. You can't be. The Yetzer Hara is like, he's like Big Brother watching with a million video cameras. Like anyone that has like a long beard, and like a lot of talmidim and whatnot, they're watching. Like the Yetzer Hara knows to look out for those guys, and so he's going to do everything he can to stop those people. But the riffraff, the Hamayinam, the Moshe Rabbeinus that are being raised in the house of power that don't even know they're Jewish, the Yetzer Hara's not paying attention to them. So it's dafka those people that are going under the radar. They're not being watched so heavily. They have the ability. The mitzvahs that they do can sneak right in, and the avodah they can do can penetrate to the highest of levels. The Yetzer Hara is not. He's not stopping. It's beneath his dignity even to be involved with those people. And therefore, dafka young people who the Yetzer Hara thinks he's a young kid. What his mitzvahs are going to accomplish much. I'm not going to pay attention. But it's dafka those people. Yisad da'ois, you establish strength. Lahashbis ois u'misnakim, to silence the mouth of prosecution. So we mechazik ourselves. We don't realize that we're a bunch of Moshe Rabbeinus walking around. Big neshamas being put in an environment that are less so conducive. So Hashem shall we should be zeichet to remember who we are, to grow from that and to become people that Mashiach will come and he'll be able to say, I came because of you guys.
Thank you, Hashem.